Shandy, how's it going? Hope you're doing really well. I had some technical difficulties while recording my first video at the West Coast, and so today when I was trying to compile the video, I realized this, and now I'm shooting it again in the backyard. I hope that's okay. Okay, so at this point, we've all become dressed into our wetsuits, and we've talked about how to get into our wetsuits in like a comfortable kind of way, and we've made our way down to the beach. And so maybe I'll just back up a little bit by talking about how to carry your board. So when you're carrying your board, there's a couple of different ways to do it. One of the ways to do it is if you have fairly long arms, you can lift your hand all the way across and carry it under your arm. That's a great way to do it. But that doesn't work for everybody. Another good option would be to carry the board on top of your head. And then a final good option would be you can find a friend and turn the fins to the outside of your bodies. And one friend grabs the board of the tail, or both boards of the tail, and the other friend at the same time grabs the other ends of the board, and you can walk down together as a team. So those are a couple good strategies to carry your boards down to the water. Okay, so now we've made it to the water, we should talk a little bit about how waves are formed. So here at the West Coast, we have the Pacific Ocean right out ahead of us. And the way that waves are formed here, we can all turn and watch them right now, beautiful waves crashing on the beach. The way that waves are formed is hundreds of kilometers out in the Pacific Ocean. There are storm systems moving around and creating wind, and all that wind is interacting with the water and making little wavelets. And then over time, as those wavelets travel toward the West Coast here, they get together and they form bigger waves. And then, given enough time, they'll form swell. So that's the big waves that we see out of the water right now, just over your shoulders. Those waves are entirely wind created, just like I said. And depending upon different factors, including the distance from your exact location on the beach to the storm, and any of the other little wind systems that are between us and that storm, can affect the quality of those waves. And by quality, I mean how large they are, and the distance between the waves. So the amount of time that it takes for one wave to crash, and then the period of time between that wave crashing and the next wave crashing along that same place. That's called the period. For us today, we're super interested in a big period of waves, and so we got a very good 15-second period today. This is going to work out pretty well for us. And then we're also interested in waves that are sort of around the 1 meter range. That'll be just about perfect for beginner surfers. We'll have enough power to get us going, but not too scary. Yeah. And when those waves come to the beach, each beach has its own type of topography that affects the way those waves crash. So if the beach is very steep, those waves will tend to come to the beach and then stand up really quickly and smash down into the water or onto the land. And in those type of like plunging waves are not great for us, for beginner surfers, because they're very, very powerful, and they can crash on the beach with such power that you just lose all your parts and maybe get hurt smashing against the ground. And you also don't have enough time to get sort of all the parts of surfing together before you hit the beach. So we're in here at the let's call it Long Beach, and Long Beach has a very sort of relatively flat topography, and so that means as the waves come, they take a while to stand up before they fall over into whitewater, and then that whitewater wall travels for quite a long time until it gets all the way into the beach. So this is a good location for us today. Okay, Next up, we should chat. Any questions on? Sorry, I should back up. Any questions on any part of the how waves are formed that I may back up and talk about more, or didn't cover and you are interested in? Okay, awesome. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for considering your questions. Next up, we'll talk about the parts of your surfboard. So today we are on a Bic soft top surfboard. It has a couple different parts to it that are important to talk about. It has the front of the board, or the nose. The nose of the board doesn't have any fins on the bottom. It has a bottom and a top, and it has the back of the board, and the back of the board is where the fins are located. These fins on this type of board are made of like a sort of a somewhat soft plastic. And then it also has this place where this cord attaches. This cord here is called your leash, and it helps you to stay connected to your surfboard. Boards come in a lot of different materials. This board is made of sort of a soft foam product, and so it's sort of soft, mostly soft, and it helps you to say, you know, if the board happens to hit you or someone else by accident, it is softer, and so it won't hurt them as much, but still would hurt. So we have to be careful to control our boards. More on that later. Just to back up, we have this leash here. This leash is what attaches you to your surfboard, and the way that it attaches is it attaches around your back foot, back ankle, and you want it to be sticking out of the side of your ankle like so, so that when you stand on your surfboard while you're surfing, it trails out the back of you and doesn't get you all tangled up in your feet. We'll talk a little bit more about how to figure out what your back foot is if you don't already know from other board sports when we get into the surfing your board part of this lesson. Okay, so probably the next part to talk about that's very important to be doing a lot of is controlling your board in the surf. So there's a few parts to controlling your board. So first is you want to have your leash on your leg so that your board is attached to you in case it happens to fall out of your hands accidentally during your surf session, or in case you fall off your board and can't control it as you fall. Alright, so here we go. Got my leash on, got my suit all done up so I'm protected from the cold water. I'm going to carry my board down to the beach, and I'm going to walk until I'm in water that's around maybe just above my knee depth. And once I'm there, I'm going to put my board into the water, and so that it's floating beside me. Now, at this point, I'm going to always make sure that as I walk out, I have the board to my side, so that it's always to the side of my body as I walk out into the surf. And that's very important, because if you happen to have it between you and the surf, as you walk out, as the waves come, they will pick up the board and they can hit you very hard with your own surfboard. So it's important that you always have your board to your side. As you walk out through the water, it's a little bit hard to demonstrate here on the land, but you can imagine my knee here is kind of the surfboard floating in the water. I'm going to put my hands onto the back of the board, and always keeping my board to my side. As the waves come, I'll push down on the back of the board, ride the nose up, and then I'm going to be able to basically push it up and over the foam piles as they come my way, those piles of white water. So here I go, floating through the water, and over comes a wave, push down, ride the nose up and over, and keep going in that kind of way. Today we're going to be surfing in surf that is appropriate for our skill levels at this day. So we're beginner surfers. So we're going to stay in waves that are they're foam piles. They're big white walls of foam, and they're going to be kind of on the depth of your sort of mid-chest would be a good place to be. Somewhere in this depth area would be a solid spot to be. Okay, so let's imagine that I've made it out through the surf. Oh, and here comes a bit of a weird wave. This isn't a foam pile wave anymore. This is a wave that is like about to crash. Like it's a big wave that hasn't crashed yet, but it's starting to stand up really, really tall and flat on the face that's facing me. And so what I can do there is I can actually scoot my whole board back in the water. A little hard to do here on land. I can grab the nose of the board, and I got kind of a couple options here. I'm going to hold on tight because it can get away from me if I don't hold on tight. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try to get I'm going to jump up and over top of the wave, holding on tight to the board. Or I'm going to like duck my head under the water and hold on tight to the board so that the wave face doesn't slap me in the side of the head and rattle my head. Any questions on controlling your board walking out through the surf? Okay, awesome. Now we'll talk about coming in on the wave and how to be safe while we do that. Well, we have our surfboard here, and it's time to turn ourselves around. So you can wait for a break in the waves until there's a large period in between them, and then we're going to turn yourself around. You can turn yourself around by scooting to the back of the board and sinking the end and then turning the whole thing. This will turn the board really fast, and then placing it back into the water. Just for the sake of the video, I'll get on the side here so you can see me better. Okay, so we haven't talked about how to surf yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let's imagine that we already know how to surf, and so we're going to climb onto our board and we'll catch the wave. But before we do any of the climbing on and catching the wave part, we need to make sure that we have a corridor toward the beach that we just came from that is clear of people. So I'm going to look up and make sure that it's clear and nobody's directly in the way of me as I go back in. And I'm going to make sure that I look to the sides of myself to make sure my fellow surfers are clear as well to the sides, and that we're going to try to surf sort of one at a time. We'll get more information on that order in a few minutes. But basically, here we go. I got a clear path. It's looking good. I'm going to hop on my board and surf in. Surfing in. Okay. And the reason that we do that very intentional check of the area inside of us, inside the beach and to the sides, is because the boards are very heavy and they can have often sharp fins on the bottom and are easy to lose control of when in the powerful and dynamic surf environment. So the idea there is that if the space is clear, you're not going to hit anybody by accident. If you do lose control of your board, say I'm surfing in and I fall off my board, the board is 3 meters long, the leash is about the same, and I'm 2 meters longish, and so I have a 8 meter area around me. There's an 8 meter zone around me where people could be hit by my surfboard if I let it get loose. Okay. Any questions on controlling your surfboard as you surf it? Awesome. So let's imagine that we've surfed a lot today, and we're getting pretty good at it, and we're able to stand up on our feet. So let's imagine that I've hopped up on my feet and that I'm surfing into the beach. I'm having a great ride. This is going really well, except I'm kind of losing control. Holy moly, what's happening here? I'm about to fall in. When I fall into the water today, what I'm going to try to do is, because the water is very shallow, because I'm surfing in fairly shallow water, and it's only getting shallower as I go in toward the beach, I'm going to try to land flat on my back into the water. So if I'm about to fall, I can feel the fall coming, what I'm going to do is basically go and flop backward and land flat on my back in the water. And this is going to reduce your likelihood of jamming an arm on the ground in a straight kind of way that could really hurt you, or hopping off, because if you hop off on your feet, you can find that it's often very shallow and easy to turn ankles over or twist knees in bad ways. So better just to land flat in the water, and then once you feel that splash of water, what you're going to do is you're going to curl up into a ball like this. And in this ball position, you're protecting your head, your face, and your neck with your hands, your arms, and your elbows. Sorry, you're protecting your hands or your face with your face, head, and neck with your hands, arms, and elbows. And in this position, you're going to hold it. And in this position, you're going to hear the sound of the water. It's going to be like, that's the sound of the wave that's above you. And you're just going to kind of hang out in that position, listening to the water become quieter. And then as the water gets quieter, it'll take a couple of seconds, you're going to cautiously find your footing and stand up with your hands still up in a guard position around your face, head, and neck. And then once you're up and about, you can, with your hands up in a guard, you can look around to make sure that no hazards are coming your way. And then once that has happened and it's nice and safe, you can let your guard down and recover your surfboard. The way to recover your surfboard is two ways. You can come up out of my guard. Okay, safe. I can walk over and grab my surfboard. Or if I find that I'm sort of far away from my surfboard, I've actually popped up over here someplace. Okay, if I find I'm quite far from my surfboard, I can actually step back until the leash goes tight, and then I can kick my foot out behind me with the leash attached to it, and that will pull the board over to me quite quickly if I'm in the water. Not so great on the land. Okay, a little bit about the beach bottom here. Each beach is different, and in your surfing careers, you'll probably surf all sorts of different beach locations. The beach we're at today is a sand bottom. The whole way across the beach, there's no small rocks or pointy objects, dead cars that are waiting for you in there. It's just a sand bottom. But that sand bottom is very hard and compact, so it's kind of like cement. So that's the hazard that's on the bottom of the water for you. Next up, we should talk about a little bit about staying together, staying with the group. So today we have a pretty big group. We have 8 people, let's call it, with 2 instructors, and so there's a lot of people and a lot of moving parts in the water. So it's better for everybody here has a way to assess if they're in the right spot or if they've floated away. So a couple of strategies to keep you with the crew. Strategy 1 is to look to your instructors and stay in their general zone. So that's maybe, try to stay in a loose pod, like a pod of orca whales. They stay fairly close together. They don't touch each other and they don't bump into each other. They have enough space in between that they can move around comfortably, but we're close-ish together as a pod. Another strategy is to use some reference points on the beach. So over there on the beach, you can see we have left our yellow cases. We have 2 yellow cases we bring that include all of our first aid materials. And we put those yellow cases a little bit far apart to act as a reference point for how far you should head that way down the beach or how far you should head that way. And if we stay within those boundaries, they'll give us a sense. And then as you go more in your career, as you progress in your surfing career, you might find yourself not on your feet like you are today. Today we're going to spend the whole day on our feet, but you might be out floating in the water on your surfboard quite far out. And in that case, you can reference 2 different locations. You can reference your something on the beach, like your yellow box, or maybe it's a big tree, or maybe it's a big house, or an outcropping of rocks, whatever it is, you can reference that location. And then you can also look at sort of 90 degrees and reference something that's over that way. Maybe it's an island, maybe it's a reef of rocks that come out from the beach. Whatever it is, if you can kind of keep those two reference points in mind, you'll know that you're in your general place that you want to be. And then a little bit around how we communicate within our group today. So both the instructors are always kind of circulating around and talking to people individually, which works pretty well if you're close to each other. But because of the loud and dynamic surf environment, it's very difficult to just speak off a plan to the group as a whole. So we use a lot of commands, but sort of by either hand signal or by like an auditory whistle signal. So let's do hand signals first. So if we need to get your attention, we'll wave at you. And what we'd like you to do is wave back so that we know that you've seen and acknowledged us, and that we're having a bit of a conversation now. And then once we have your attention, we're going to ask you, are you okay? Maybe you had a really big fall, and we're really concerned that that fall looked pretty wild, and you might have been injured, or you might not be okay. And so if you're not okay, you can just stand there or start heading toward the beach. But if you are okay and everything is totally fine, if you could just respond with our I'm okay. So it's a kind of a call and response thing. So wave, you wave back, and then are you okay? I'm okay. Or I'm not okay. And then there's also some commands like, hello, can you please come back to the group? You floated too far away, come on back. That's a pretty good one, you might see that a little bit today. And let's say the final command we'll use is, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up, everybody, we're heading into the beach. Wrap it up, going into the beach. It's kind of like a lasso. We're gonna lasso and wrap it up to the beach. Okay, any questions on any of those hand signals that we might use today, or anything about your position in the water? Any questions at all? Awesome. Okay, and the next thing we might use in case of like an emergency situation, you might, or I guess that's not totally accurate, in case of an emergency situation, or in case that we're having a really tough time getting your attention because you're just super in the zone, we might use like an auditory, a whistle blast. So we all the instructors have a whistle in our pocket, like a Lifeguard Fox 40 whistle, which is super loud. And so if you hear a beep, that's to give your attention to the person who's whistling. So that's your cue to look around and see what they're asking you to do. Maybe it's come on back, or maybe it's a wrap it up, or maybe it's a are you okay? Any questions at all? Okay. Next part we should talk about is a little bit of why we're using all these different signals, and we're talking about reference points and staying with the group. Well, the reason is that beaches are super dynamic, and they have the water in the beaches isn't just smashing against the land as the waves come in. It's actually moving around quite a lot. And the way that water moves as it comes to the beach in a surf environment is it has what they call a longshore rip, which is where water is traveling down the beach one way or the other, and then it has like an outflowing rip. So that's kind of like a river of water that's flowing back out to sea. And so those are called rip currents. And a little bit more about them, I guess. They're caused by the interaction between the tide, wind, and the surf. How the surf comes into the beach. Basically, the kind of like basic version of this principle is that as waves and wind and tide interact, there can be more water up right by the beach, than there is out in the main ocean. And when there's a differential in water heights, the water at the beach wants to flow back to become equal with the main ocean volume. And so what happens there is it forms into channels and rivers of water. So we have the channel that runs down the beach one way or the other, that's the longshore, and at some point it'll hit an obstacle, or it will just, the sandbars will guide it that way, and it'll travel out to sea. So if you find yourself in a rip current today, there's a couple of options. If you're in the type of rip current that's heading down the beach, you can use your reference points, or you can watch for the group and, oh, I've left the pod and my reference points are floating away rapidly. What I can do in that case is I can go just basically get to the beach. You can surf in, or you can walk back to the land and then walk back to the group and check in with the instructors. If you happen to be in the type of rip current that's taking you out to the ocean, or out into deeper water is really more accurate. If you happen to find yourself in that position, your options there are to stay with your surfboard, and then you can paddle. If this is the rip current coming in, you can paddle at sort of 90 degrees or maybe even 45 degrees to that flow of water, and if you can just paddle out of the rip current and back into the crashing waves, you'll be able to power your way back to the beach with some surfing. The important thing is to remain calm and know that you're under control if you're with your board and you're making your way out of the rip current. Any questions on rip currents? I know they can be quite a complex thing to discuss. So please, if you have any questions. Okay. Let's now transition into a little bit about how to catch surf on our surfboards. So, catch and surf. This is where the fun starts. Okay, so the first thing to do is we've talked already about how the leash is attached to our ankle. That's pretty straightforward if you're a skateboarder, or if you're a snowboarder, you know that you have a front foot and a back foot. But if you've never done a board sport before, there's a couple ways you can figure it out. One way would just be to stand with your feet together and then kind of lean forward, and then whatever foot comes naturally forward, that's going to be your front foot for today. And if you try it for a little while and it doesn't feel totally comfortable for you, that's okay. You can switch your leash and then see how that feels for you. Okay. All right. Next thing is how to climb onto your board, or actually back it up, how to position yourself so you're in a good spot to catch waves. So we're going to have positioned ourselves so we've gone out to water that is somewhere between our armpit and belly button depth, sort of mid-chest area, and we want to stay on our feet as we go out there to move around and hold onto the board. That's just going to help us maintain our positions a bit easier. Once you're out there, you're going to be waiting for a wave of water that's coming your way that is just a giant, pretty uniform wall of white water that stands a foot and a half, 2 feet tall, less than a meter. And so it should be like a nice, even wall of water, and preferably have a good amount of time before that wall of water hits you to get yourself organized onto your board and ready to go. Okay, so let's imagine that the perfect wave is coming my way right now. Well, here it comes. It's going to be really good. It's time to get onto my surfboard. Okay, so what I can do is I can grab the rails of the board. I can scoot my foot across and then kind of drag my body onto the board. Once I'm in this position, I'm going to try to position my body down the center line of the board so that so that the board isn't tipping to one side or the other. And at this point, I'm going to make sure that my feet are on the surfboard at the back. And I'm also going to try to, with my feet, feel the back of the board. I should just be feeling the very end of the board with my feet. That's called, that helps you to help position yourself or balance your board. If you're too far back, with your feet hanging in the water, like mine are now, the board's going to sort of stand up in a bit of a wheelie position, and it's going to be quite slow and unable to catch surf that way. If you're far forward here, as you catch the wave, the board's going to nosedive into the water and you're going to go scooting off the front. So we want to find ourselves in a position with our feet at the back of the board. Okay, so I look back, I make sure the wave's still coming. I'm on my board, I got my board balanced, and now I'm going to make sure that my board is directly pointed into the shore, like at a 90-degree angle to the wave that's coming my way. Okay, it looks like I'm all lined up. Now it's time to start paddling. A good paddle stroke sinks your arm all the way up to the elbow in the column of water and pulls water all the way down toward the back of the board, or pushes it down toward your feet. And it's sort of a front crawl kind of swim stroke, with your head up nice and high looking where you're going. Okay, here I go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm gonna pretend that 6 strokes was the 6 powerful strokes that I took were enough to kind of get me going pretty strong. Maybe I need to put 7 or 8 in before the wave hits me. And then you can imagine that I'm still laying on the board right now, but the wave has caught up. It's caught up to me, and now I'm going pretty fast too, and the wave starts to just like tickle the back of my feet and lift my board up into kind of this position. Once you feel that happening, that's the board hitting you from behind. Once you feel that happening, that's your cue. That's your cue to paddle harder. So now I'm going to toss in 3 or 4 more really strong strokes to catch my board up to the face of the wave. So here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's enough, hopefully. Maybe not quite enough. Maybe you need to put 1 more or 2 more in to accelerate you. So now you've caught up to the wave. You're surfing the wave. The way to tell that is to look to each side and make sure the wave is beside you, or you're on the face of the wave on each side. Or you can look up ahead to see where you're going. You're like, oh yeah, I've accelerated. I'm going really fast now. My board is kind of shot up and caught up to the face of the wave. Once you're here, you can put your hands flat on the surface of the board, nice and tight in beside your ribs, and you're going to push yourself up into like a baby cobra kind of position that you might do in yoga. And from here, you're in a good position to surf into the beach, and you can practice driving in straight, or you can practice slightly weighting one side of the board or the other, and turning your board ever so slightly. Just having a sense of how the board feels as it surfs in. And once you've done the baby cobra, it's time to celebrate, because you are officially surfing. Congratulations. It's a really sweet feeling. Surfing on your belly is awesome. It is a great experience. So that's a cause for celebration. Okay. Any questions? Awesome. So typically at this point, Shandy, I'd take my group out and we do a very brief paddle where everyone's been asked to try to catch 3 belly rides. And so it's kind of like a very brief kind of 15-minute belly ride session. And so in this session time, we're just basically coaching them as much as we can, getting the the nerves out a little bit and getting used to catching rides on their belly. This seems to help a lot because breaking it up in this way helps to reduce people missing waves, because they're so excited to stand up they just try to pop up. So that's been my experience, and it seems to be very effective to break it up in this way. So we'd go surfing for a bit in a very tight, controlled, close to the beach kind of way, and then return in before we do the second part of the pop-up and the surf etiquette portion. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay, so let's imagine that we've gone surfing and it's been super fun, and everyone's had a lot of great success, and we've probably done some coaching in the water about hand placement and balancing the board and such. Okay, so we're getting back to the beach, and now it's time to practice our pop-ups and talk a little bit finally about surf etiquette before we go. Okay, so Good job, everybody. Time back in. Good job, everybody. I hope you're all doing super well, or I saw you guys all doing super well. Congratulations. We've all surfed. So pats on the backs and high fives for all. Nice job. So the next thing we're going to do is continue to work on our surf progression. We're going to practice our pop-up. Okay, so here we go. Let's imagine the same thing again. I've turned my board around, so it's facing 90 degrees to the water, to the land, and it's time to surf in. So I'm waiting to see the perfect wave coming. Oh yeah, perfect wave is still a wave that's 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, and is a very even and uniform wall of white water. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to climb onto my board. Climbing on. I'm going to balance my board by finding my feet at the back. Okay, here we go. I'm all balanced and ready to go. The wave is still coming. I'm still oriented well to the beach and to the wave. Time to paddle. Oh, the wave is touching the back of my board. Time to throw in some big, powerful strokes. Okay, perfect. I've caught the wave. I'm going to confirm that I've caught the wave. I'm going fast. I've felt the acceleration of the board. And now it's time to do my pop-up. Now that I'm on the wave and I'm riding the face of the wave, it's my chance to do my pop-up. So I'm going to place my hands in toward the board, or in toward the center line of the board. I'm going to place them nice and close to my chest. And then I'm going to drag my feet up underneath my body. So my feet are down the center line of the board, and I'm going to try to stand up through my feet. Once I'm up, a good position to find yourself in is with a straight back. My body is on top of the surf, on top of the center line of the surfboard. My chest and hands and face are looking to the direction of travel. Okay. So I'll do it a couple more times just to make sure everyone has got it and touch on a few of those points again. Okay, so the wave comes, or I'm paddling, the wave comes, now I'm going to throw in my big powerful strokes. Once I've caught the wave, oh yeah, I'm on the wave, now what do? Now it's time to pop up. Hands go in close to my body, flat on the surface of the board, I'm pushing up into that cobra, dragging my feet underneath myself, and standing up through my legs with my high eyes, chest, and hands out for balance, but looking forward. Okay, and then I'll do a quicker version of that, just to show what you can get to at some point in the future. Okay, here goes a faster version of the pop-up. Okay, so that would be how I instruct surfing the pop-up. Like that's probably the more advanced version of the pop-up, and I'd use that for groups that are, because we see at my place of employment, we see different varying levels of. This is a timeout for Shandy here. At my employment place, we see different body types, experience levels, and sort of fitness levels and abilities, and so. To help make this a more accessible program and more accessible activity for people, we offer like a more advanced pop-up for people who are ready for that type of pop-up in their life, and we can also do an alternative pop-up, which is a bit it doesn't take quite as much core, or people have wrist problems, or all the different issues that people come with, or have tight hips. So the alternative pop-up we might offer would be standing up onto one knee, 1 foot between, and then standing up through your feet in such a way. So again, that would be it's not my preferred option, but it does work if people are Okay, and then basically at this point we'd do some detection and correction. We'd talk, we'd have people lie down on their boards, and we'd ask people to do some pop-ups and figure out which foot goes front and which foot goes back, and make sure we can balance our boards on the beach, and then practice doing some pop-ups and do a bit of detection and correction around their pop-up itself, their foot placement or hand placement on the board. We're looking for, center line, getting their feet down the center line. The way that they stand up, either through like their knees, or maybe some people end up standing up through kind of like a bending kind of motion, which is not so effective because you'll fall in. And then their placement in terms of their location upon the board, because some folks will pop up really powerfully and end up sort of mid-board, and others will end up way at the back. So trying to find ourselves in sort of that zone in the line between the back third and the mid third of the board would be kind of my suggestion for your foot placement zone. Yeah, so that would be how I'd instruct the pop-up section. And then before we release the crew back into the water to try out their skills in the water, we'd have them do a handful of these, and each person would receive some direct feedback from an instructor, so that they're getting the most out of it on land, what they can hear as best they can. And then before we go, we gather the group up for one final quick chat about surf etiquette, because depending on the day, and depending on what they get up to in the future in terms of their surf careers, they can find themselves in groups that really, they might get into some trouble. So surf etiquette in a nutshell. As you're walking your board out today, I would tell the group. So today, in our little pod of people here, we're worried about keeping space, like I already spoke about, and making sure nobody's inside of you as you surf in. That's super important to make sure you have a clear path for safety of you, yourself, and others. And then we talk a little bit, but we do see other surfers. There's lots of other surfers out there in the world, and we're going to maybe interact with some today. So if you see a surfer who's wading out in the surf, and they're going to try to catch a wave, and they're going to try to surf maybe this way, or they're going to kind of come in and maybe that way a little bit, that's what the expectation is. Or maybe you don't even know which direction they're going to go. It's a bit of a mystery, because you just don't know. And so what you can do in that case is, with your board, you'd walk well around them and give them lots of space, so that you don't end up in a situation where they're surfing and you're walking out and then you guys have an accident. So good to give yourselves lots of space as you walk out. Let's see. Next would be, as you're getting out there to catch surf, there's a bit of a lineup. So people are surfing, and they're taking turns, or not quite turns, but they're basically in a line to like a queue, like you would be at the grocery store. So people are in a line waiting for their chance to take a surf wave, or wave to surf. As they surf in, they expect that they'll have just their turn by themselves. So you don't want to just hop onto any old wave outside of the lineup, because it's the same as when you cut line at the grocery store. People don't like it, and you can get into some confrontations that way, or have a bad accident. When you get out to the lineup, if you end up getting out there in your surf career someday, you want to make sure that when you adhere to the line, you don't try to cut line by paddling around people or getting in front of others who have already been there and waiting their turn. And the final little piece that I think would be really important and for your future careers, when you go to Hawaii in your future days, or you come out here on your own, rent some boards, and head out to the peak, it's important to know that the person who is closest to the first section of the wave that breaks into foam, it's that person's wave to ride. So that's another kind of principle of the etiquette. And then the final thing is very important also, is knowing your own abilities and surfing in places that are appropriate to your skill level and ability. So it wouldn't be appropriate for a beginner surfer to take the rental board and just go out to the peak on a super busy day. That's not the place for you. You'd want to, just like any sport, you want to take it in small steps, become comfortable with foam, step it up to smaller waves, and then eventually, as you become more proficient and skilled in your ability to control your board and surf waves, and understanding of surf etiquette, you progress to the bigger peaks where people are lining up. Any questions on surf etiquette or anything about the pop-up we've already talked about, or any questions at all about anything? Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for listening through this, Shandy, and I hope you're doing really well. Okay, see you at the surf.
You